So with our Azure Data Factory resource in place, we're ready to start building pipelines. And a pipeline encapsulates a data flow that includes copying the data and transforming the data as we move it from one place to another. Now to make that happen, we're going to perform activities within our pipeline. And those activities could be simple data copies, where we simply take the data from one location and put it into another. Or they could be transformations, where we filter or aggregate or otherwise change the structure of the data as we move it. Now to make those activities happen, we're going to use linked services. So we'll link our pipeline to different external services that provide the services we need to process the data. Some of those might be data sources, so perhaps Azure Data Lake Store or Azure Blob Storage, or maybe a database like Azure SQL Database, or some other feed or some other location of data that we want to ingest into our workflow. And some of those linked services will be data sinks or destinations, where we want to store the output of our pipeline. So we might want to store the results in a database like Azure SQL Database, or perhaps we want to put it in a folder in Azure Data Lake Store ready to be picked up for further processing. The other linked services that we're going to have are going to be things that transform the data. So these might be Spark clusters or Hadoop clusters or USQL scripts running in Azure Data Lake Analytics. Services that are going to actually take the data and process it. Now the other thing that we need to do as we define our pipeline and these activities that are going to occur using linked services is describe the structure of the data as it moves in and out of each of the different activities in the process. So we're going to use data sets to define the structure of the data for the inputs and outputs for each of those linked services that process the data. And those data sets are going to describe the fields and the data types that those different inputs and outputs are going to contain. So with all of these various components in place, we're ready to start building pipelines that take our data and move or transform it, ready to be picked up for analytics at the other end.